Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Guy. Here. Gilligan.
Here.
Alderman. Jones.
Here.
Koval.
Here.
Heber.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
This time I entertain a motion for approval of the board meeting minutes of February 24th, 2022.
So moved.
First by Ms. Fisher. I'll second. Second by Mr. Koval. Any comments, questions, or concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Fisher?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the treasurer's report for February 2022.
I have a motion on the table to approve the treasurer's report for February 2022. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Brady. Any comments, questions, or concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. At this time, no president's report. Just for the general public, just so you know, Ms. Solomon was just running a few minutes late. She just was able to come into the boardroom, so we'll go ahead and consider her present, even though she just didn't vote on the last meeting. So, at this time, we will go to visitor comments. Mr. Clay, I think you've been through it enough. You know the drill. 5 minutes, and time is yours.
Thank you. One answer to the question, who is afraid of DEI, could be the victims of the child soldiers of Portland, Oregon. In the fall of 2021, I encouraged the PASD board directors of that time to read the spring of 2021 City Journal article, The Child Soldiers of Portland by Christopher F. Rufo. So today I encourage all new directors here to do the same. California, Oregon, and Washington are called the left coast for a reason. If you research Oregon in general, and Portland in particular, you will find that the mantra of diversity, equity, and inclusion has been working its will there for a long time. You can find K-12 Portland public school plans about diversity, inclusion, or equity from long ago. At Portland State University, you can also find that diversity, equity, and inclusion is described as a value and a mission that is the essential framework of who they are and what they do as an institution and community. Have any of you ever heard about Peter Boghossian, about who he is, about what he is? Peter Boghossian is an atheist. He's a man of the left. He's a former professor at Portland State University Philosophy Department. He does not seem to deny objective reality. He's anti-woke, and he has a spine. As a man in a position to know, Peter Boghossian characterizes Portland State University as a social justice factory. Under that, a university committed to the mission and values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, being a social justice factory. The former Soviet Union used Marxist-Leninist communism to profoundly coerce its society into living by lies. Concerning this coercion, I encourage you to read the book, Live Not by Lies by Rod Dreher. To my understanding, many survivors of communist tyranny from around the world have fear of what they see within the American diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda. I encourage each of you to take the time and effort to locate and research 2 particular articles. The first is the American Conservative article by Rod Dreher titled, How to Understand Woke Jargon. That article touches upon Peter Boghossian and features a very insightful chart that addresses how to interpret aspects of social justice rhetoric, aspects including diversity, equity, and inclusion. The second is the Epic Times article by Brad Jones titled, San Diego County School Retracts Wheel of Privilege Teaching Tool. This article touches upon connections between the Marxist, neo-Marxist features of this wheel of power / privilege and the diversity, equity, and inclusion big idea agenda. In addition, to my understanding, on January the 28th, 2021, the PASD was scheduled to receive training about, quote, determining the impact of power and privilege, unquote. I wonder what the PASD has done with that training. This push to advance both transformative social and emotional learning in diversity, equity, and inclusion is not limited to the PASD. Possibly it's associated with a MIT Press book by Benny Adamczak titled Communism for Kids. This small book engages children with assurances that past communistic attempts to perfect humanity and progress towards a perfected world failed, not because tyranny is an inescapable feature of all such coercive utopian enterprises, but rather because of one unfortunate but avoidable glitch or another. Got it? Just wait. The next time will be perfect. Have any of you heard of a belief system, a heresy if you would, called utopian social paganism? The appearance that over a year ago, the PASD was embedding one or more components of diversity, equity, and inclusion into the district begs the question, who first legally demanded that the PASD begin this embedding process? Was it the federal government or the Commonwealth? If the current board can find no legal requirement for the initiation of this embedding process, then shouldn't the public be told the truth about why it was indeed begun? Is it possible it was initiated not because of any legal duty, but because of the zeal of some within the PASD? Speaking of being afraid to allay any fear of improprieties here, wouldn't it be nice if the PASD would transparently release to the public all the facts about the preceding 4 questions? Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Thank you. This time we'll move over to the curriculum committee. Mr. Pat?
At the last curriculum committee meeting, Dr. Kepler gave us a report on the work. Actually, the committee made up of teachers, administrators, and the public of a comprehensive plan, 5-year program, and it will be introducing it to us in the springtime. We also had a report on Act 158, which is basically the graduation requirements of our students and they meeting state requirements. There was public comment by Pat Sealy dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our next meeting will be on March 24th.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Staff administration, Mr. Green.
Mr. Jones. The last staffing and administration committee meeting was February 24th. We reviewed board policies, recommended to approve the first reading of the following board policies, which are policies that will be before the board this evening. Dr. Kepler reviewed updates to the existing policies as well as 2 new policies in preparation of the motion of the reading this evening. We had 2 public comments by Mr. Kleinfelder and Ms. Steele. The next meeting of the Staffing and Administration Committee is scheduled for Thursday, March 10th, after the Finance Committee meeting.
Statements on the board policies.
Yes, so from that, the board policies first reading, Dr. Kepler.
This is what you would make your motions
Oh, I'm sorry, for the minutes or for the board?
for the starting with policies. Yes.
Okay, so I would make a motion to approve the first reading of these board policies. Is that correct?
Yep, so I have a motion on the table to approve the first reading of the board policies listed below: weapons, terroristic threats, student assistance program, threat assessment, hazing, bullying, cyberbullying, dating violence. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sue Gilligan. Any comments, questions, concerns from anybody? Kind of went over it last
I'll
time.
indicate to you it's exactly what you reviewed it.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And then we have before us this evening the health and safety plan. I would like to make a motion to approve do you talk about it first? I'm good. Okay.
You're good.
Motion to approve the updated health and safety plan in accordance with the CDC updated guidance in relation to masks on buses.
I have a motion on the table to approve amended health safety plan in regards to masking on buses. Is there a second? Second by Mary Ann. Any comments, questions, concerns?
Just state to you. I'm sorry. Apologies.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to state that the only change is basically removing the federal mandate that masks were required that's removed, and this simply removes that from our health and safety plan to mirror the new guidelines from the CDC.
Hearing no comments, questions, or concerns, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And before us this evening, we have the staffing and administration consent agenda out of the last committee meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Braden. I'll speak through some of these tonight. Congratulations to Mr. Dave Watson, who has announced his retirement. One of our 4 high school counselors retiring in October. So we thank Mr. Watson for his many years of service to serving our students as counselor, and for many years he actually did the master schedule at the high school before the administration took that back some, say, 6 years ago or so. Losing 2 good educators who are accepting positions elsewhere, but Nadia O'Meara and Andrea Wagner, we thank them for their service. 2 new hires for you for next year already. These are folks who are long-term subs this year, and they're accepting full-time employment with us at the beginning of next year. You'll see some transfers there with some current staff moving to new positions for next year. And hence we'll have postings for those positions that they would be leaving. Item 6, I'm going to highlight Terry Barlett. Terry retiring as custodian at Northside Elementary, and that guy deserves more praise than I can give him right now. To give you the kind of example of the gentleman that Terry is, student a couple years ago lost his or her retainer, threw it in the trash. Terry dumpster dove until he found that retainer for that child. That's the kind of custodian that Terry is, doing everything he can to meet the needs of anybody in that building. He will be sorely missed. A few resignations, some new substitutes, which we're always pleased about. Tuition students for next year, we would be approving those. That has been an ongoing relationship with that family. It has worked out well. Your foreign exchange students, and then ultimately the new contract at River Rock Academy. Anytime we have a new program, we bring a contract to you, and this is for a student who actually started there this week to receive services in that setting.
Just a comment here. Again, one of the people that I've worked very closely with for many years, Dave Watson. Seems like only yesterday that Principal Kelly Harbaugh last week be his mentor, and now he's retiring. So he's done a great job in the guidance department and high school for the guidance.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda from the Staffing and Administration Committee meeting. 224.
I have the first by Mrs. Brady and the second by Mr. Guy. Any other comments or questions concerning that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. With that, we'll move on to communications. Those are obviously there for public record. At this time, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. So we'll go with the first with Ms. Fisher, and then we'll go with the second with Sue Gilligan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Recording stopped.
Grounds have nothing.
Mr. Prince is checking the sign-in sheet to see if we had any visitor comment.
Yes.
Thanks.
Building grounds? And then Maria Fisher? Is that building grounds?
No, nope. I just signed it.
Will you sign up that thing? Was that what you talked about before? Yeah. So that's passed.
Now there's no public comment.
Over to finance.
And first item on the agenda is the Finance Committee is the 22-23 proposed technology budget.
All right, I'm so excited I get to present instead of just sitting behind a computer, so this is really fun for me. So I would like to present the IT budget for the next school year, and I have a couple slides. So when we look at the IT budget, our department is focused, thank you, sustainability of equipment. So we're looking at equipment that's going to last for a long time, maximizing our financial investment, ensuring equity of resources. And we really saw this when COVID-19 hit. And we had devices for 6 through 12. It was a lot easier to roll things out. K through 5, we had basically a 1-to-2 ratio. So 15 iPads in a classroom doesn't really help when there's 24 students in there. So we are now in a 1-to-1 model. New opportunities for learning both in and out of school. So all of our students have the same device. And then also ways to provide technology infrastructure support. So now that we have our devices, how are we going to maintain them? Support our teachers, support our students, and support our parents. So I just wanted to kind of lay out what we have already, since not many of you are familiar with our K through 12 program. So starting with staff. When new staff come on board, they're given an iPad, an Apple Pencil, an iPad stand, and a laptop. So that iPad stand kind of does two different things. It allows teachers to be able to film synchronously, which we did during COVID, but more importantly, it also replaces our hover cams. So it provides a document camera type of thing. So when a teacher is doing a demonstration, such as hands-on math manipulatives, we can put the iPad on the stand and then broadcast right to the board so students all over the classroom can see, allows greater accessibility, etc. So they're using their iPad for more than just apps and educational content. We're using it as a different device. The Apple Pencil allows the teachers to use their iPad to project to the whiteboard. Our interactive or our projector is all of Apple TVs. So teacher can write with the pencil. Students can actually, whatever they're doing on the iPad can be broadcast to the front of the room as well using the Apple TV. They can be broadcast to each other. It allows teachers to push out apps for our younger learners. So sending a website out to first graders can be difficult. With the iPad through Apple Classroom, it's one click and it goes everywhere. So it's a very, very nice system. Our aides get either an iPad or laptop depending on the assignment, depending on the building. Special ed aides might be different than middle school aides, different than high school aides. So that really just kind of depends where they're going. Secretaries use laptops, and then they also have iPads for camera usage. So we do have a system where we are able to take our newest equipment. Our Macs last a really long time. So our secretaries right now are using devices that are a couple years old that are perfect for their job situation. We typically give them a monitor. So it's really, they're using a keyboard and then a monitor with an older laptop, and it works really well. And then they have an iPad set up on the desk to monitor the cameras going in and out. Our students K-8 are receiving an iPad and a case. So here is an example of the cases that we have. The students have ones that have Cougars on them. We do have different cases for special education students. They might have a thicker one that flips that can be set up on the table, or they might be in an OtterBox type of style, depending on the age of the student, the need of the student, etc. So they are receiving both the iPad and the case. Our 9 through 12 students do have a MacBook. And I'll show you this one because you'll probably never see it again. It is an 11-inch MacBook. It is a student model. It was only made for a year or two and then discontinued. So it's nice in that our last lease, we were able to get them the first year they were put out, but then they discontinued them very quickly and were unable to get them again, which is very unfortunate because it is a really nice size for them. And there's a case on them now. Our Cougar Academy students are receiving in K-8 a MacBook. To do a fully online platform on an iPad can be a little difficult. So they're receiving a MacBook as well. And some of our high school special ed Cougar Academy students are receiving an iPad. because they are doing some synchronous classes, their math, their writing. So it allows that greater flexibility in there. We also cover assistive technology, work very closely with Kathy and Carolyn. Assistive technology for district students and out-of-district placements as well. And that's going to be dependent on their IEP. So it could be any of these devices. It could be a pen that reads things to them. It could be an audio device. So we provide all of that and support that. So we operate on lease cycles for the most part, and there's a couple of exceptions in there. Our elementary student and teachers also received new iPads last summer, so they just started their lease. So they're on a 4-year lease cycle, and again, we just started July 1st. Middle school student and teacher, they're heading into their last year. That would be next year. Then we'll be looking for a new lease to bring for you for the following year. But they're also on the same model. We try to keep our students and our teachers on the exact same model of iPads, as well as the laptops for high school, just so when the teachers are prepping for their lessons or they're working with students, they know what the iPads can do. Our high school teachers also have iPads. This one's a little different. We were able to purchase them October 2020 with ESSER funding. They're not on a lease, but moving forward, when those do age out, we would be looking to begin a new leasing cycle for those teachers. And then our high school student MacBook, these were on a 5-year lease. They're ending on June 2022. So we will be looking to bring a new lease before you.
Just to echo that, student use 5 years is quite a lengthy time for a laptop to last. So that's been an important element for us to be able to fund that we can get through 5 years with a device.
It has. And we are actually, the new lease cycle is going to bring it down to 4. When we were looking at our replacement, we had to purchase some additional laptops this year. They weren't able to be used. Some of these laptops, they're a little too old, so students have to strategically put themselves around classes because they have to stay charged the entire class. So if you have a high school student, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Also with the resale value, after 4 years, we sell them right back, and we do receive quite a bit of money for them, which is on the next slide. So our value of Apple products. The nice thing about Apple products, they are more expensive from the beginning, but they do retain their value as well as they last for a pretty long time. We have devices in the district that are from 2012 that are still, we're using them, you know, they could be a loaner device or they could be running a search station somewhere. So we are able to take those older devices and then use them for some different things. Devices that we're not going to be repurposing, we do sell to a company. Then we generate revenue from them. So it's kind of a nice cycle that we have going on. So this past year, we brought in about 160,000. We don't have that final number because we just shipped off another set of iPads. Actually, we shipped them out today. So it's going to take a little bit for them to go through, and they do an audit process where they look at all of our devices, see the shape they're in. And I think with the cases on the iPads, they hold up pretty well. Our estimate next year, the 180 for the sale of our MacBooks, and that's from the student devices as well as the teacher devices. This is going to also depend when we get equipment, because the estimate depends on the time of the year. So if we are able to get our equipment earlier in the summer and then prep those devices and sell them back in June, then the resellers can have them for the back to school crowd, as opposed to typical resale is done in September and then another round in November and December. And I think with equipment shortages, that's going to play a little bit into this year as well. So it might actually work to our favor. And again, the value increased prior to the start of the school year, which is why our team was prepping iPads for sale now, when this isn't typically a time that we would do it, just knowing that the resale value and what we can get would be higher than waiting any longer, because they can have it ready then for the summer and then be selling it to parents as they prep for the new school year. So there's some strategy in when we're prepping those.
And this revenue is included in your revenue budget, so it is factored into our annual operation.
Mm-hmm. So IT department, we do a lot with not a lot of people. We do iPad repairs, which is something that hadn't been done for a long time. And we do have a technician, Josh Bleacher. We have 2 Tech 2 positions, and he's very good. So all those shattered screens, you know, I mean, there's times where I just hand him something because there's glass coming off, and he works his magic and he can fix a shattered screen. Yesterday he did one. I mean, I think it was like within 24 hours, he had it back to the student. And we do have a loaner system in place. So student shatters a screen, brings it to a building secretary. The building secretary puts the fine in PowerSchool with a debt letter. All of our students have agreements. So there's agreements on the charge for those. And then we get them, we replace a screen, and they go right back out. So that happens for the majority of the cases. There are some times where we have to send them out to a third-party company to get them repaired. We've seen iPads bent, actually bent in half. He unbent one the other day. I don't know how he did it, but he has some kind of tool set up that he unbent. He's the iPad whisperer. Laptop repairs can be a little bit more tricky, but we are able to repair the majority ourselves. It just kind of depends on the nature of the repair. If we don't repair them, we do send them out again to a third-party company. Typically, the first or second year of a laptop, we're looking at higher repairs. Because the laptops are so new, it can be very difficult to find parts that are affordable. Right now, we buy iPad screens from Amazon. You can't really do that with a brand new laptop. So it might be a little bit higher, but generally, we're able to do that. IT staffing, we have, besides my position, Christy Garl, who is our IT supervisor. She is our senior systems admin. She makes all the phones, network, security, servers. She knows all of that, does an amazing job. Daryl Eisenhower is our assistant IT supervisor and our systems admin. So he works a lot with our management software, some of the systems that we work with. And again, we have the Tech 2 positions, as well as Heidi Bingaman, who does our data management, as well as PINs, all that types of stuff. We do work with many different vendors. So you'll see in the IT budget that there are line items for, we work with vendors. We have specific contracts for our wireless access points, our server maintenance, our phone systems, telecommunications, and so on. So that's just kind of what we do. So looking at our budget, there's a couple of categories where I did go over index. I wanted to explain those a little bit. The first one is the computer and iPad lease. Again, we have a new high school laptop lease. We knew that this would be higher than previous leases going into it, just because we can't get the devices that we had gotten before. We also have our two highest classes at the high school this time. So we were in a position where we have to buy additional devices. Going into this year, we actually had to purchase additional 11-inch MacBooks, just because, again, a 5-year lease becomes difficult in that 5th year. So we were buying quantities of 10 and 20 from Amazon, eBay, third-party resellers. We kind of went back to the resellers and said, do you have any that you can sell to us? So we were in a kind of an odd position that we shouldn't be in the next time. But again, that's higher from that category. Our repairs and maintenance, that's not just iPad, laptop, that's anything. So phone switch goes out or we have to replace a server. Those are things that come out of that budget line item. Our supply budget, our admin software, that's just a natural increase. Our equipment category did go down a little bit. Anytime there's an iPad lease, it will be higher because we do case all the iPads. We have cases on these laptops that don't do a whole lot. Half of our kids, I would say 60% of our kids don't have cases anymore, and we can't get these cases. They don't really provide a lot of protection to a laptop. As opposed to an iPad, there's no way we can have an iPad without a case. The laptops aren't really providing a lot of protection. So we're not going to move forward with any type of case on them, and we don't need iPad cases in this next budget. The other category is the phones and communications, and that one is a little bit of an increase. Back in June, was it, when we passed the cell phone stipends for support staff, that started coming out of the IT budget, and that was an item just not budgeted for. So we added it to the budget. That's in there. We also added a few hotspots that we've been paying for the past couple years. We have 2 for athletics to be able to stream out by the field because we don't get great reception out there. So we have 2 just out there. And we have a couple that we are keeping for loaner devices for COVID quarantine, and we've been using them. So we are able to deploy them very quickly. We need them. Somebody needs them, puts in a tech ticket, we get them out, we get them back at the high school. We have a very good system for that. So very limited amount, not like we were doing 2 years ago. But moving forward, we need to have them. And then we added Zoom as a budgeted item for board meetings.
So to put the additional costs into perspective, our local general operating budget includes those costs. However, in 22-23, next year, we are able to offset some of that using some of our ESSER stimulus funds. And then again, a smaller amount in 23-24. We maintain some extra funds that offset our local budget.
That computer and iPad lease amount, is that for the total life of the lease? Do we pay that all at once? Or is that the yearly cost?
So there's a couple different leases that go in that category. So the lease, it's going to vary kind of year to year. So next year we're going to have an amount, and then the following year I'll be bringing to you a new lease for the middle school iPads. We're not seeing the iPads have generally stayed the same. It's the laptops that vary in price a little bit because it depends on the devices that are out there and what they're going to be. But we've seen iPad leases remain pretty steady.
Those are the leases for all hardware in the district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, the lease for next year that we would be bringing to you would be the middle school, high school teacher. So middle school, high school teachers, we would ask for new laptops. They're at the end of their life cycle. So there's a 13-inch MacBook Air. There's actually a student model that if you go to the Apple store, you won't see. It's a lower memory, but it's fine. It's actually the same memory as our 11-inch. And then we have the teacher model, which is a regular model with education pricing, 5-year down to a 4-year lease. And again, increased revenue from equipment sale. We believe that's going to make up for that. We did add a piece of software that's in my software budget that covers it. That's why we have that 3%. We do need an additional piece of software to deploy devices just based on the new model of laptops. We require an additional software. That's it.
Questions?
Just to comment on the timing of this new lease, as KK noted, it's important that they have the devices ready to go when school starts. If we would wait till July to order them, there's no way in the world that would happen. So what we will be doing, it'll be the first meeting in April, so we'll provide a copy at the next board meeting, but we'd like the board to approve that lease with Apple beginning in April. The way the payment terms work with them is a lease, it is a 0% lease, so there's no additional cost to borrowing that money. It helps us spread it out at no additional cost. And approving it at that point, the payment is not due until July 1st. So no matter how soon we get those in their hands, Apple does realize the process that we have to go through until they're ready for students. So that even though we'll be approving the lease in April, we'll have the devices hopefully soon after that.
Mm-hmm.
Payment won't be made until July. And the numbers that KK showed include that proposed lease.
Is there anything that we would need to, given the things that have gone on lately, that we may consider that versus April? Do you see any benefit to that, or
We may be able
some backlog things? Because I totally understand what you're saying.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I'm saying this is because in this last week, I've gotten like 3 phone calls of I've procured more materials than I ever would have, given what's going on with sanctions and stuff like that. So I don't know how these play into that.
We're not quite sure. If we're able to get the lease, and part of this is because we're using ESSER funds, we can't pass a traditional lease because it's over a 4-year period. So during that time, we really aren't allowed to use the ESSER funds. So we're going to have a quasi, kind of a shorter lease that will be paid with the ESSER funds, and then a longer lease that will be paid with the district funds. I don't know that that'll be ready in time because it's just something a little different, a little new that we have to have some time to work through and make sure we're okay. But I don't believe though that would be an issue in terms of getting the devices. We're already in line. They know the process is happening. We've met. I know I've met with KK 3 times with Apple to review contract.
Yeah, we should be fine with laptops. It's actually iPads that are taking a while. Our iPads are shipping, I ordered 50, it's 9 to 11 weeks that they're taking. They're still not here. But laptops will, if we have that in April, we should be good to have them for the summer.
Yep.
We do provide a lot of technology help, which I think I need to provide some now. Building capacity is something we do.
Folks at home have no idea what you're referencing.
That's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, KJ. Next up on the agenda is the 22-23 proposed building and grounds budget.
I think you guys read the report that I gave every month. I think this last month did give you a kind of an outline of what personnel we have. We have 4 maintenance guys that take care of the whole district. We have 1 grounds guy that takes care of all the mowers, vehicles, and the grounds. And we have 30 custodians that take care of 6 buildings. So, this is the highlights of the budget. Security, that number there, that represents all the fob readers, which is what we use to get in the building. It is a little device like that to get in. We can, at the drop of a hat, we can turn people on and off. Also, that includes our monitoring of 6, 7, 8 buildings. We monitor the turf building. We also monitor the maintenance building also. With that, and that's off-site. That monitors our boilers, refrigerators, freezers. It also gives us some temperature, motion, door alarms, any of that.
Water flow.
Water flow, yes, water flow also. The next one would be disposal. There was an increase in disposal, and that was due to a recycling cost increase. We meet the borough requirements, we have to recycle. So we put the recycling in. Also, the turf complex, with the amount of use it's getting. The first year we didn't see it because of COVID. It wasn't being used. Now we're seeing weekend uses, Saturdays, Sundays. It's being used all day. Weekdays, we're starting to have games on it all the time. So the dumpster disposal is every night now, instead of what used to be once a week. Moving on to snow and lawn care. Basically, with the snow and lawn care, that increase is due to the playground material, and that fluctuates every year depending on how much playground material got taken out with the kids, or blown away, or washed away, whatever. Also, we have to meet a insurance amount of depth of it and cushion to meet the insurance requirements. Utilities, you see a decrease in there. Both Mr. Kepler and Mr. Friends had questioned that. That's going off of last year's data at the end of the year and basing it on where we are this year compared to last year. I do contribute some of that to think about the last 3 years. We have not had bad winters. This year we did not have real cold weather until Christmas. So last year we had the same thing. So I believe that that's some of the reason we have some lower costs. Repairs and preventive maintenance. You see a record increase there. There was quite a few things that were added this year. We went back to cleaning every building's carpets, which had been pulled out because of building use last year, and with COVID we didn't do it. We have fire extinguisher inspections. Those vary every year. We're coming into a year where a lot of our fire extinguishers will not be able to be tested and labeled again. We're going to have to actually replace them. And then also we have some building management contracts every year. They inch up a little bit. We're locked in that for another year yet, and then we can negotiate again. Stage rigging. We included stage rigging inspections for both middle school and high school, which was not being done before, and we included that in this summer so that we can make sure that they're inspected every year now. And then turf surface testing. That's pretty much the items that are jacking this up a little bit. Unexpected breakdowns also fall into that repair and preventive maintenance. Our guys take care of quite a bit. They save the district hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, but there are items that they cannot work on due to the freon level that's in them, pressures they're dealing with, they're not licensed to. It could be a lot of different things. It could be some of the high voltage that we really don't want our guys messing around with the high voltage stuff, that type of thing. Moving on then to supplies and equipment. Supplies and equipment there, our supplies actually stayed the same. So our supplies is not increasing. What's increasing is equipment. We are looking at replacing a 38-year-old mower. It's a 15-foot batwing mower. It's been running for 38 years. It's running. We're just hoping it doesn't quit yet. But we're looking at trying to get that replaced. And hopefully it'll last another 35.
Yeah, good luck.
And then we move on to rental equipment. Rental equipment, you see a huge drop. And that's basically due to, we used to have trailers at every building due to COVID, pulling out furniture, storing it so we could have social distancing and that. All those trailers were empty last year. They left this summer. We're left with 2 trailers that are housing attic stock from the 3 construction projects. We don't have any room to store that stuff, so we're storing them in trailers right now. And then training and dues stayed the same, but that does entail pesticide training for our guys. We have 3 of us that are certified in that. HVAC training, they have to keep up on their credits on that. We have 2 guys that are certified in that. We have a teacher that also has to keep up on his pool credits for his license. So that's pretty much the classes we're taking. If other classes come up, we do send guys to, just send our, you want to call him our carpenter, we send him to a door hardware class to get a training on some of the mechanisms on the high school classroom doors that are breaking. So. And the last thing is insurance. That 5% is based on what the insurance agent is saying that he estimates it to be. He will not have numbers, I don't think, until May. So we were told to put in 5%. Any questions on any of that or any of the other budget information you had?
The only question I had was, sorry, it was kind of in the treasury report or whatever, but I saw in December, the number may be wrong, the winterizing of the tour facility, it's like 15,000. Did you pay that same to unwinterize it or something like that? It seemed like a very high number to me. That was why
I would have to look at it. There shouldn't be any 15,000 to winterize it. Our guys winterize it.
Okay.
I can.
Yeah, you can just look. I'd be curious if we've done a cost analysis on what it is to either just keep it open or winterizing.
We can't.
I just want to make sure
We can't keep it open because it wasn't designed to withstand temperatures that are below freezing. But they didn't put the heating system in that would be able to withstand that. They didn't expect it to be open. So our bathrooms, our concession stand, those type of things have to be drained and shut down every year. That's why it's locked over the winter time and not able to be used. But like right now, we do have heaters running, and there are enough heaters in there that can keep this temperature. You know, get cold at night, but get warm during the day. But I'll check on that 15,000.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a 15,000.
Mr. Jones, which treasurer's report?
I think it was the December.
December?
Yeah, it was the first treasury report of the
Mr. Board reading?
yeah.
Okay.
I would say there was a.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's shocking.
Money
It's a huge number. It might have been, like I said, it might have been 7,000, and I might be wondering if I doubled it, thinking that there'd be an under-winterized. I looked in this report when I was looking. I didn't see anything there. That would be my only, me personally, I would, if you could do some research on that, and, you know, maybe on the budget thing, what it is for that, because I know we're all looking for ways to generate revenue, things of that. That's a beautiful facility, but it's a shame that we don't use it or publicize it, PR it, whatever you want to call it, for the winter or whatever, to other places to be able to rent it or things like that. If we're looking for some some places to try to generate more revenue. But, again, just shame that we didn't do that, whatever that is. So if you could look into that, what it would take potentially, or what we spend in that, what would be the cost difference, I'd be interested in that personally. I don't know.
I would. I think the 3 1/4 is kind of attractive, so,
Yeah, so that would be my only
Okay.
recommendation.
I can tell you for closing it, I would, if you would have said $15, I would have been more, because, the only thing I know our guys bought for it was, the entries dumped out the
Like you said, I think I might have probably translated it 7,000 and just doubled it in my head,
Okay.
of a winterizing that. But either way, when I looked at the number, I know I personally talked to Mr. Koval about it at the very beginning. I'm like, holy cow, that seems like a lot of money. That
There could be other things included.
Yeah, there might be other things included in it. Maybe it was lumped up in one on the transaction report, but that would be what I'd look at.
Well, so I'm hearing two things. We'll get an answer to the board on what that expenditure was for. We'll be back at that treasurer's report. And I also heard you just ask to investigate a cost to allow that building not to have to be winterized.
That would be me personally. I would look for other members of the board if you guys want that. I'm just for that information. If other members want to see that as well, I think bring it to the meeting. But I'm looking for that as well. Yes.
Just get that information without.
For that explanation, I will tell you that probably what we come back with, our guys have the knowledge to bring that ourselves. We wouldn't have to go outside to contractors. Equipment issues, I can't guarantee that.
No, absolutely, yeah.
We just ordered a hot water heater and they told us it's gonna be May at the earliest.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Sorry, I came across the wrong way. I didn't want to interrupt. I was curious if the added disposal costs will be included in like whatever maybe rental fees we have. If places are coming in that are renting it that are causing that increase, or is that just our regular sports and athletics?
I would say it's both. We got this turf complex. We really didn't get to use it the first year, because COVID hit, and then pretty much all the sports were getting shut down and that. So we didn't really get to use it. So we didn't even have to worry about trash too much there. But then over summer, we rented it out, and now it's in full swing. This spring, I would bet that it's probably going to be used till 10 o'clock every night.
Yeah. And in the past, we had costs, but they were associated with our rent hit in the net. So when we were paying a rental fee of roughly $35,000 a year for their facility, we basically, those costs came back here now because our fans are here and using that facility for school-related events, and the trash is here, not at the event.
Speaking of the one event that I was tied to this summer, right, that just by sheer circumstance, I think it's really when you have it rented for tournament fees. I don't know that, yes, you have the outside teams like, baseball may use it a night here and there, but I know when Hogan's lacrosse rented the facility this summer, they went through the dumpster Saturday, you had to call to get it emptied, and you went through it Sunday. So I to your point, I think we should maybe look at if for those specific people, if you may want to do like a increased rent in theirs, because those are the guys that are really generating it, right? Where they're bringing in 1,000 people on a Saturday and then 1,000 people on a Sunday. They wouldn't. I think our normal wear and tear sports, I think you're right. You're going to see it no matter what. But I don't think that's what's driving it.
Let me look into it a little bit too about I wasn't aware that we filled it up Saturday and then we filled it up Sunday again. We may have to look at working something out where they pick it up on the weekend. Right now they're picking it up Friday morning and they won't pick it up again until Monday. So
yeah, I would tell you definitely for like if it's a major like a lacrosse or a soccer, I think those are really your only big ones that are bringing in the amount of people. I don't know if baseball is bringing in that many people on a weekend, but it's your one where they're running both fields of the soccer with multiple 15, 20 games a day on each field, and then plus they have that you probably want to. And again, I pass it on to them.
Yeah.
They're more than willing to pay that rental fee.
We'll look at that. We would likely have to be driven through board policy, use of facility policy. I think it's 707. That states the rental fees for all 4 classification of groups, rental flights, custodial fees, and this would have to be added. So we'll explore that.
Yeah, I think if you want to do that, especially in preparation for the summer, because it seems like everything's kind of going back to normal. We'll accept costs.
Any other
Off the
questions?
top of your head, do you know about how many external contracts do we have on the turf fields?
People using it?
Yeah,
Outside renters, if you will.
outside renters.
I know there's a field hockey group or 2. I want to say a lacrosse group. Coach Joe has a lacrosse group that rents it. Future Stars, baseball, in the net rents, not typically the turf, but other fields.
Okay. Each of those have an agreement with the district, is that, or is there a?
No, most of them submit a use of facility and pay rental as whatever classification group they are. The Future Stars organization has a board approved sponsorship where they're paying top of my head, I don't want to get too specific because I don't want to give you incorrect information. So part of their arrangement is a direct sponsorship. It's for 5 years. And the other part of it is field rental, and it specifies that rate for 10 weekends. And then rentals beyond that, they fall back to the board policy rate.
But it is not only turf that is filling up dumpsters either. I mean, we have tennis tournaments, that are big, So there's other groups that are using fields other than the turf that are also contributing to some of the trash too.
Who's our service provider?
It is, GFL. They've been extremely good to work with. Last year at this time, we probably had 25 overcharges for just, if a dumpster was full like that, if it's not that far, they charge us extra for it. We haven't gotten any this year. When we call them and say, can I pick this up, and that, a lot of times they'll just pick it up.
I just have one other question. The supplies and equipment, is there built into that at all, like long-term plan where you replace certain supplies, not supplies, replace certain equipment like every 5 years, 10 years?
We are trying to rotate mowers out. Vehicles are not in there. As far as HVAC equipment, no, there is no plan for that at this point. I think Dr. Kepler had talked about trying to get a 5-year plan together, so we can kind of look ahead. We've got some roof issues that we've got to be looking at. Roofs are coming out of warranty. The high school, probably 15 years old, maybe older than that now, since the last renovation on that. So we've got units. We're babysitting a unit right now that is that is 20 years old. And even our pool, that unit there, as much as we're saying the cost of it, I think that pool pack is probably 18, 20 years old. So, we're getting the life out of it, and I contributed that to our guys, the quality of guys we have that can do that stuff. They looked at the pool heater. They said, "Oh, well, the coil looks good." Yeah, the guys had just replaced it with a coil that wasn't even for that. You can't get the coil for that anymore. They went out, had a company make the coil for them, and they were able to put it in. So we're keeping stuff working. So I would say, yes, there's a rotation in the mowers. Vehicle-wise, I think there's a fund.
So the capital fund is.
At one point, there was some money pulled out of there for whatever, for the budget for something else. But we're trying to get back into rotation. I mean, some of our vehicles, I mean, our oldest vehicle is a 2000, and that's a plowing vehicle. We have, I think our newest vehicle is probably I thought it was pretty new, but it's a 2015. So you're talking 6 years old already. So, our newest vehicles. So we're trying to rotate them out, make them last as long as they can. Because a lot of times our vehicles don't have high mileage, or it's age and rust. It's what attacks them. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Alrighty, next up on the finance agenda is a review of summer and capital projects.
So this is information that the board has seen a couple of times, and this is just normal time when we review this again. So wanted to bring to your attention. Make sure everybody is aware of some of the large projects that we'll have going over the summer, and then. So I'll just talk about the project. You can bring the old one up.
Put the old one up there.
So the solar project. Our attorney is working, sending the letters to Hershey Company to ask for the deed restrictions to be lifted for that item. Hope to, at our May meeting, provide an update not only on where we are at that process, having an answer, but also been looking at some grants or grant funding that may be available for that. So hopefully our buildings and grounds committee today will provide an update for that item. The Auditorium or the pool, as we talked about, I think the last meeting, last buildings and grounds meeting, there was a huge concern about getting that work completed this summer. A lot of that because of getting equipment in or lack of ability to get the equipment in. So that will be an item that we will be looking to do in the summer of 2023. So not this summer. However, we want to make sure we're getting ahead and making sure we're planning. We had enough time for that to occur. So once again, in our May meeting, plan to provide you a rough scenario of the planning for that to go forward, so that project can happen in the summer of 2023. Box truck replacement, as noted, there's money in our capital reserve fund. Capital projects fund that's reserved for this box truck. It just needs to be found, which we're finding as anybody who's tried to purchase a vehicle the last 6 months or more knows, there just aren't a lot available or out there. So when that becomes available, we will purchase that. The middle school and Northside parking lot project, we should have the specs from our architect before the end of this month, and so at the April Buildings and Grounds meeting, we'll update you on where we are in that process. We will have the specs by that time. We'll be looking to put the item out for bid, or maybe other ways of doing it, because once again, we're finding that may be a challenge getting that completed with the availability of manpower and things that are needed. So our architect has noted that as part of the specs that will be provided, they'll also be providing some alternatives to kind of make sure we're getting this done this summer. So once again, we'll update more on that at the April Buildings and Grounds meeting. Number 5, and number 6 have been ordered and are on their way in. Some of them we have received between the serving and the cabling and the updates of the cameras. The others, the 7, 8, and 9 that are listed there are more of those long-range plans. Nothing currently that will happen next year, and we're still the projectors. We define a funding mechanism, so it's not a hard process to go through to order them. But right now, we don't have funds set aside or available for that. The high school auditorium lighting project, as you can see, the cost there anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000. Once again, that's a funding item that we'll have to talk about more long range, and that would be an item that Dr. Kepler and I bring forward, hopefully within the next couple of months, in terms of what we're thinking in terms of a long range plan, and then some ways that hopefully we're able to fund that as well. Tennis fencing, once again, is another project that we're putting on. One of the other items that I had included on there that on the updated form is we also have some flooring that is being replaced at Pine Street Elementary. This is actually a project that started last summer, and once again, with the lack of availability of getting products in, we were able to complete the job. But if you've been to Pine Street Elementary, you'll see some of the floors have been shot blasted already and prepared to do that this summer. The total project cost for that is about $71,000 to do a portion of the building. I think it gets maybe about 65% of the building to 70% completed with that $71,000. And that is a project that will be undertaken as soon as the students are gone out of the building. We may have some additional shot blasting and tiles that are pulled up in some areas that were connectors, and it just makes sense to do them all while we're doing them there. And hopefully the guys are able to get in there on maybe one of our long breaks or a weekend or something like that to get that prepped so that it's there. So I wanted to provide that. I think it wasn't on the list from before because it was a project that was already put in place, so it was just put on hold due to the lack of resources. So that will be another undertaking this summer. So that is a scenario or the summary of all of the large projects that we have going on this summer.
Who's the district's current electricity provider?
So we purchase, I have to look at the exact, we use an electricity broker called URA, and they shop the best rates for us. We currently, I don't get you the name of the provider, but I don't have it at the top of my head. We have a lock-in contract that's actually good till the end of 2023. So our electricity costs, or our price for electricity is locked in, which is a great thing because that is another item that's gone through the roof in terms of costs, and just kind of like gasoline or any of those utilities, just things that are going up out of our control. But we need them. We have to use them. Fortunately, we are locked in. We are provided. We're MedEd. MedEd provides the connection, but we are able to go out and buy our electricity from the lowest provider and substitute that for anything.
You said locked until 2023.
Yes.
June 30 total. Yeah, so next year. So the budget number you saw tonight, Keith's budget, I think it was utilities, it was down about 21,000. So we're able to do that because of A, we've had fair weather winters, and B, we're locked in through next year. So this time next year, we'll be shopping again, and might be hard pressed to be able to maintain the rates we're seeing today.
Yeah, and actually our broker, URA, and I've worked in various districts, they do a great job of keeping us up to date and talking about those purchasing plans, providing us things, I'll be getting information probably in the next couple of months in terms of what's the strategy looking forward. If we're able to find a dip, maybe we lock in a lot. If not, we kind of stay on the side and lock in little bits until we find that dip. So we do have somebody out there that's working for us to purchase the electricity at the best possible rates.
Just thinking too, in terms of the solar project, if we are able to get our rates locked in, so to speak, so what that costs. But, okay, thank you.
No other agendas or, items on the agenda. Okay, so that concludes the finance committee for this evening.
Staffing and administration, the first item on the agenda is board policies first reading.
Yes, two of these policies, I'll just show you one of them as they're literally the same change. We're required to specifically name the individual in policy. And with Darcy's retirement, Mike is now our compliance officer. So that's simply a name change in policy 103, discrimination Title IX, and 104, the sexual harassment. So literally taking Darcy's name out, putting Mike's in. Policy 903, language change stems from a First Amendment court case in Eastern Pennsylvania school district. And it was spoken about actually in this room, and just changing the guidelines of when the presiding officer at a school board meeting may conclude an individual's citizen's public comment. Prior language basically said that the presiding officer could end public comment if comments were personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. And the school district, Eastern PA, I don't want to say which district because I'm not 100% certain. But new case law clearly is showing that you, First Amendment rights of a citizen, you have to a degree, sit and take it. So this changes that language. And the only time the presiding officer would want to terminate that public comment is if it exceeds the time frame established, or if the comments reveal confidential information about a minor child, or if there's physically threatening harm. But otherwise, the new language is strongly encourage that citizens avoid comments that are personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant.
Thank you very much, Dr. Butler. The next item on the agenda is the 2022-2023 school board meeting schedule.
Thank you, Mrs. Braden. So we have for you tonight proposed dates for our meetings for the next fiscal year. Traditional second and fourth Thursday, unless there is a conflict, and I'll go through quickly. We try to avoid that fourth Thursday in October just because of the potential of trick or treat. I think Lebanon County has recently stuck to the actual 31st, if I'm not mistaken. Having kids that are older, I don't quite remember. Thanksgiving we avoid. As a board, you're going to be looking at restructuring reorg. So you'll notice here, proposing to you that there is not a voting meeting the night of reorg. That there's reorganization, some committees will be informational, but no vote that night. And then one voting meeting in December, followed by the traditional committees. And that is not the fourth Thursday because of timing there and the holidays. January traditional, February, March, 2nd and 4th through April, May. And when we get to May, June, we always have to make sure we have 30 days between the proposed budget and final adoption, as your budget has to be on public display, and we meet that here. And looking at June 8th would have been our traditional board meeting, but it is the night of graduation. So we're looking at June 15th and do a back-to-back week in June is our recommendation.
All right, thank you, Dr. Butler. Item number 3, I'm sorry, are we finished?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Item number 3 on the agenda is the track naming proposal.
Thank you. Our athletic department, Mr. Weidler and Coach Bird, who's been our longstanding high school head coach for track and field, have brought forward a proposal to name our track, the Carl Scaneri track, at Buckswank Stadium. Other facilities in the district have been named after individuals. I think it's been quite some time. And we have Buckswank Stadium. We have Ross Watts Library, I believe, and there's another one. Larry, come on.
What else, Larry?
Buckswank, Ross Watts. I don't know, but The reason for their recommendation, Mr. Scaneri is currently in his 62nd year of coaching track and field at Palmyra Area High School. 62 years. He's been doing it on a voluntary basis for a long time. But if you look, he's a graduate in 1952, head track coach from 58 to 92. He started our women's track and field, or girls track and field team in 1972, 308 wins, number of state champions, district champions, county and conference championships. And again, actually, I stand corrected. They calculate 64 total years that Coach Scaneri has been involved as well. So what their proposal is that through donations, no district dollars, that they would be able to erect a sign at the far northwest corner of the grassy area there as you enter the track, facing the entrance to the stadium, and they would have a sign signifying Carl Scaneri Track at Bucks County Stadium.
A lot of years. Is he still out there running with the kids?
He is. Coach Scaneri, with COVID, he started to step back at one time, I think in the spring of 20 or 21, but chose then to keep moving forward and wasn't here as much because he's a volunteer, but he's back almost every day here in the spring.
Item number 4 on the agenda is new positions in the 2022-2023 budget.
Thank you. We're cycling this back through just to share with you, once again, the new positions that we currently have built in the budget. The only item that you didn't see in the early numbers was that of the school police officer. We've added that to the budget, so as you get updates here as we proceed through the spring, these are the new items. We have justification there for you. On our English language learner student group, you can kind of just see our growth. We've hovered in the 40s to 50s. You see in previous years, 18, 19, there are 45 students who needed EL services that grew to 55 last year. And you can see we're actually, I believe we're over 70 to 72 right now. We have 2 full-time teachers providing support for those students, and they said we can't provide what we need to. So hence why we're recommending a 3rd EL teacher. One of the resignations you saw tonight was an EL teacher, so we had to hire one to replace somebody, and this is an ask for an additional position.
Quick question about the EL there.
Yes.
Do we know how many different languages are we bringing
Great question.
Our largest population right now is our Nepali population. But I just spoke to one of the EL teachers today, and she got 2 new students this week. But I will have to get that for you.
That's okay.
I would say it's probably, more than 10.
And I think it'd be excellent data and knowledge for the board and the community to know, how many different languages are represented in our district.
And it also is, it's the language and it's the level, their EL level coming in, and we're finding more of our students coming in that are on the lower, that are getting low access WIDA tests are still at 2s, 1s, some coming in from high school, or even at the high school level. And that causes a big problem because that means their level of English is very, very basic. Speak more, but I will get that information to you.
Second piece of data for you tonight is regarding our proposal for an additional certified school nurse. And you can just see by building where medication distribution. There's a number of students with diabetes and severe diabetic care and more significant needs has increased significantly over the last couple of years, to where we actually have a lot of, if a nurse is out and we can't find a substitute, we're moving nurses around the buildings to make sure we have somebody in that building to care for that specific student who is diabetic. High intensity needs, our nurses have classified students Number of visits to the nurse's office in 21-22, and that was as of January, so that's not even half a school year. So, you see a notation there from Forge is because of shortages of nurses, we've had agency nurses in at times as well, helping us cover our healthcare needs of our students. Chronic conditions that require an individualized health plan. See, a number of students and nurses are involved in all the meetings and developing those plans with other members of our school team. And then the required screenings, you can see basically what is required and where they're required. So BMI vision screenings, and that's every student. It's coming down annually for that. Height, weight check, vision screenings annually, hearing screenings, and scoliosis screenings at the middle school. When we say there's a proposal for an additional nurse, there will also be an offset of some of the costs as because of shortages and not having substitute nurses available, where when we can, we have to bring in a nurse from a service provider, which obviously they're making money too, so you're paying even a higher rate. So our hope would be through an additional nurse here, we would reduce those costs. We would also reduce the need for substitutes that come in to help us when we're doing those screenings. As well, additional nursing staff, and won't have to pay a substitute for a day when we're doing screenings. So there'll be some reduced costs in other areas. Those are all factored into the budget proposal. Okay, our proposal would be that the certified school nurse, we have currently 3 certified school nurses, high school, middle school, and lingual. Forge, Pine, and Northside are covered by nurse assistants. Certified school nurses actually have more education than an RN. They're basically an RN with additional schooling to get school nurse certification through the Commonwealth. Our nurse assistants are typically LPNs and some RNs. This proposal would be to place the additional certified school nurse at Pine, our next largest elementary, and that nurse assistant, which is a support staff position in the support staff contract, would be a floater supporting in other buildings, and then being the first line of defense when we have a vacancy. We would be the first. If we couldn't get a substitute, they would be utilized to cover. It's the nurse data justification for you, and the last, the business teacher, Dr. Richardson and Mr. Reiser and Mr. Starter will put this together. Ultimately, we have a graduation requirement that all students take career and financial literacy. The next 2 years, our junior class, which is when that class is offered, are our largest classes, with 315, 319 students in those 2 classes. To provide student number of sections needed for that course, if we don't have an additional teacher, we're going to be cutting other electives. Accounting, or computer science type courses and things of that nature, we wouldn't be able to offer. So the other piece that this would allow us to do is help staff our career and financial literacy offering through Cougar Academy. Right now, we have a teacher who gets paid above contract because they do that outside all that work outside their regular work schedule, and that money would be saved. We're paying, maybe not as much this year, but I think last year, over $10,000 additional costs for Cougar Academy offerings there that we wouldn't have to pay because we would have to staff it. So it wouldn't be even a full salary. That gives you some of the background of what would occur. So multimedia, web design, applied engineering, computer science courses will be able to be returned to our offerings. Additionally, right now, family and consumer science certification in the Commonwealth can teach our career and financial literacy course because of how the course is written. Right now, some of our electives in family and consumer science we can't offer because a teacher in that department is taking some of the career and financial literacy sections. This would put that all back in the business department, and we'd be able to offer some of our additional electives in family and consumer science. principles of education being one of them, where it's a self-serving piece, that it's an elective for high school students interested in the field of education. They're able to get in and begin learning and about the field of education, and almost encouraging folks to go into this career because it's a good one. So again, just to highlight new positions that we have for you, just a reminder for you as we continue to enter budget season.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kepler. And then anyone have public comments?
The two checks on there are people that said they wanna.
Mr. Clee? Do you have any public comment?
Nothing.
Mr. Kleinfelder? Any other comments? That would conclude our meeting then, at the staffing and administration committee.
Okay, at this time, the board will move into executive session. We've got some legal matters to discuss this evening, as well as potential hirings. So we appreciate everybody for coming out. We'll take a 5-minute break.